Group in Geneva, the organizing committee, on behalf of all colleagues in Geneva, the red of civil Geneva, thank you for honoring us to celebrate with us the 50th anniversary of the OAA. We have also panelists, as you see in the list. We will start with Président Madame ZUMA will come back after the panelists have spoken in the appropriate time. So right away, the time will just go to the
Chairperson of the brothers, sisters, friends of Africa, let me thank you for affording me this opportunity of being part of your celebration here. What you have done is that you have given me the second chance of celebrating the 50th anniversary of OAA, because I was with the directors and the chairperson of the commission in Addis May, when we
talk a little bit about is good governance, peace, and security in Africa. And I will want to say that that topic is a little bit incomplete, because when you have good governance, peace, and security, to achieve what? For what purpose? It must be to a means to an end. And for me, what is the end? The end should be for Africa's sustainable development, growth, and well-being of all our people. Development, growth, and well-being of all our people. If that is the case, and I hope nobody will feel that that is not the case, I want to start by taking up some basics which I believe we can agree. Hope you will bear with me on that. Democracy must go with good governance, and so much must be popular participation and inclusiveness. Now, if any of these is missing from good governance, I believe that good governance is impaired. Democracy, popular participation, and inclusiveness. Then let me take the issue of peace, because if you are going to have peace, it must start with good governance. And with peace must go equity, justice, fairness, caring and sharing, and core value within our community. Value of compassion, of integrity, and all that. So peace must have these factors as the factors that build it up and make it enduring peace. Security, with security must go stability, predictability, conflict resolution, and conflict management. Because these are things also that must form the basis and the foundation of security. Now, if we got democracy, peace, good governance, and security, and the purpose is to lead to development, what are we talking about in development, in developmental terms? We are talking about economy, we are talking about social, we are talking about political, we are talking about education, we are talking about health, we are talking about infrastructure, we are talking about agribusiness, we are talking about manufacturing, just to mention a few. Now, these must be part of the development for which you have got democracy, good governance, peace, and security at the foundation of the basis. And then, I will say within each of our countries, as a beginning, there must also be cooperation and even internal cohesion, if you like, internal integration, cooperation, and sense of common citizenship. Otherwise, the society itself will be a fragmented society. We're talking about cooperation and integration, there's the regional aspect of this, there's the continental aspect of it, and of course, there's also what I call the international community aspect of it. Maybe I will come to this later. But now that I have touched on the basics, let me go back and take the issue of governance, democracy, governance, peace, and development in Africa as basis for the well-being and the welfare of all Africans. And I want to look at this in four segments. The first segment, where were we 50 years ago? When we were all full of expectation. Africa is coming out of colonialism, and this big continent, what is expected of it? What are the Africans expecting of the newly acquired independence? I believe at that time, when Nkrumah said, give us political freedom and all other things will be added onto it. Maybe he was a little bit ahead of his time. We got political freedom and everybody was full of expectation. Not everything else was added onto it. But it wasn't because our leaders were not really thinking of Africa. It wasn't because they do not have the interest of Africa at heart or interest of their people. There are few things that debilitated against our interest. One, commodity prices were good, and we never look beyond commodity prices. We were selling, we were getting good money, and we thought it would go on that way. Two, most of our leaders were ill-prepared. I've told the story of President Nyerere, which he told me himself. A good teacher, wanted by his community and persuaded by his community to come into politics, and he did. He contested election and his party won. And when the party won, he was invited to become chief minister. And the first day in the office as chief minister, the secretary, the British secretary, went to him and said, Mr. Chief Minister, when you write minutes to the governor, you start with YE. You make a short statement, not long, short. You initial it and you put date. That is as much training as President Nyerere got to become the chief minister and later on the prime minister of his country. Now every minute he was writing, he would start with YE until he wrote a minute to his secretary, YE secretary. And the secretary got the minute and ran to him and said, "You are wrong, Mr. Chief Minister. There's only one YE." And then President Nyerere said, "What does YE mean? What does YE mean?" Said, "It means Your Excellency." Now, we won't say that President Nyerere was not well-meaning, but it was that enough preparation for him to take on the responsibility of managing the affairs of his country, politically, economically, socially, culturally, internationally. That's what he had. He was not as lucky as the like of Senghor and Houphouët, who had been part of government in France. Maybe even for some, like Lumumba, it was even worse. Now, I just say this for us to underline the handicaps. Well, the commodity prices that we thought would be going right started coming down. And when it's not coming down, the prices of what we bought, machineries and things, started going up. And at one time, again to quote President Nyerere, he said, what the amount of coffee he needed to buy a tractor in 1963, he needed 4 times that amount in 1975 to buy the same size and type of tractor. And that was part of our problem. Now, that problem persisted. Another aspect of the problem was the problem of political nature. Now, how do we handle opposition? Most African languages have no word for opposition. I know in my own language there's no word for opposition. The word for opposition means enemy. So what do you do? How do you deal with an enemy? Now, and then, of course, you know what came out of that. Military dictatorship. One party rule. And that was what was in the vogue about 25 years ago. Age of military dictatorship, seat-tight president, one-party rule, and all that. That was when things really went down for Africa. And it went down very badly. Politically, economically, socially, in every sense of the word. Then, of course, at that time, we were grappling with where do we go? Should we go the way of capitalism, where our colonial masters were? Or should we go the way of this shining new idea of socialism? Again, I visited. At that time when I was military head of state, I visited an African country. And there was the map, no, not map, there was the picture of maps. And so I asked my host, I said, hey, what is this for? He said, that's what our academic experts say we need. So it's not only the politicians, even our academic experts, our brothers, they would know better. And they said we should go that way, and some of us follow where they said we should go because we took them as experts. Then the end of the Cold War, and we started looking at things differently. And not only did we start looking at things differently, that led us to preparing for the end of a millennium, the end of a century, and the end of a decade, and the beginning of another one. And a number of things happened, which we must give credit partly to the international community and partly to our leaders. We had MDG. We did not have anything like that before, where the international community came up and said, look, these are objectives that we must achieve within a particular period of time. We in Africa decided that we should change from OAU to AU. While the OAU set out to completely get rid of colonialism in Africa. And we must give ourselves the credit that we achieved that by and large. But it also had some faults. It said, look, the internal affairs of every country is sacrosanct, and it doesn't matter what you do with your people, who are Africans, who are our own people. You can do whatever you like with them. Nobody will raise a voice. We also, for OAU, said that, look, the borders inherited are sacrosanct. I believe at that time it was a wise decision, because if we haven't, now Nigeria will say all the Yorubas in Republic of Benin home or wage war on the Republic of Benin, annex where the Yorubas live. Or Nigeria may say all the Hausa Fulanis in the Niger Republic, in Chad, up to Burkina Faso should become part of Nigeria. Now, I think that was good. But then we managed that. But the AU thought differently. One, that AU must not condone impunity. You cannot take your people who are Africans, who are my brothers, no matter where I live, and treat them with impunity and say, yes, your internal affairs of your country is your responsibility. So we bring in the ability to intervene, or the capacity to intervene. We bring in what we didn't have before, Council for Security, for Peace and Security. Madam, is that what we call it? Okay. Peace and Security Council. We bring it in. We now also changed our focus from mainly political to mainly economic and social. We did not forget political, but mainly economic and social. Now that is where we found ourselves at the turn of the century. And then, of course, I must say that the leadership that saw us to the beginning of the century were a little bit more experienced. And let me take 2 or 3. For instance, before the advent of AU, you have President Bouteflika in Algeria, who for many years in the past has been foreign minister. You had President Thabo Mbeki in South Africa, who for at least 5 years had been vice president. And you have one man called Olusegun OBASANJO in Nigeria, who had been in his first coming being a military dictator. But he had it. But he had acquired something. Not so. The quality of leadership in terms of experience had improved, no doubt. Now that saw us through to the beginning of the new millennium, new century, and new decade. And we are not afraid. We are not afraid of reform. That the change we must have, and positive change, which reform is all about, for our people. And I believe it is that led to the economies which wrote off Africa at the beginning of this century. 10 years later saying, well, Africa is on the rise. Africa arise. Africa open for business and all that. I don't want to bore you with statistics that you know, but that is the situation that we find ourselves. Now let us us look at that situation now. Reform that we have had and all that, are there things that we need to do right now, that will lead us another 5 years and take us to be near the promised land, that will make us to be able to say that the 21st century is going to be Africa's century. Madam Chairperson, I may crave your indulgence some of the things that I have seen and some that you share with me. I think we have shown that we can have African solution to African problems. We did it in Liberia. We did it in Sierra Leone. We did it in Sudan. We did it in Somalia. We nearly did it in Mali. Nearly. Now, but even where we did it, we did not have enough resources to do it all entirely on our own and sustain it all entirely on our own. We need resources. And I believe that resources that we need to be able to devise African solutions for African problems and sustainably execute solutions, we can raise substantial amount of that fund internally within Africa. At this juncture, I want to commend the chairperson because she's taken on board or hand how to get alternative funding for the work and the function of AU. Another thing that I believe we need is we need a lot more cooperation, a lot more integration, particularly in the area of trade and economic interaction. Now, doing business in Africa and having to transact 54 different countries with not 54 different languages, but when you move from one country to another, neighboring, you speak, you change language, you go to another one, you maybe change language again, the forms are different. It's eternally painful to try and do business that way. We must find commonality of doing business. And if cooperation and integration means just to be able to transact business in Africa in the same way that makes doing business in Africa easy, is something that is worth looking into and doing. But I believe that we must be the architect of our own fortune in this area. Infrastructure, we must take infrastructure together, not just having a good road in one country. That good road in one country must lead us, and we have a good road in another country. It is very, very important. So, what more do we have to do? Nationally, we have to bring our country in greater cohesion. We have to ensure more democracy. We have to ensure more good governance. Corruption is still rife in almost all our countries. into a country where they have 20, 25 languages. And when you go into the state house, you think that you are in a village where they all speak the same language of the leader. What happened to the language of other people in that country? Now, if you are not confident and comfortable that you will have people from other tribes and ethnic group in your state house, then why should other people have confidence to call you their president?
That's right.
Why? If all you will have is whatever your tribe is. Madam, yours is, I will use your Zulu. If all that you will have is Zulu, why should Kosa feel that you are their president? I think these are the national level we have to do. At the regional level, I believe we need more. I was telling the story, I was keen at lunch, I was telling the story of ECOWAS. People said we have advanced. I was keen that ECOWAS will have a common currency. And our experts said, look, we must have this thing they call convergence. I think it's 5 or 4. And this year, some of us will have 3 of the convergence. And next year we will have gone down to 2. The one that had 2 last year will go to 3. And for 8 years we were on this, I was there, and we couldn't move. I believe we should find a better way. If 3 or 4 are able to, let them get on. And those that are ready later can join them. But we must have. If you go to a local market and you have to do your transaction, some in rand, some in naira, some in dollar, some in CFA, some in pound sterling, it will be a real confusion. You must have a common currency. It helps. Infrastructure, I've talked about. Continentally, we must move towards integration. We have no alternative, but we have to move towards integration. I believe that internationally, there must be more democracy. There must be more clearly greater involvement of Africa in participation in decisions that affect us, and in division of labor that would be of interest to us. But more importantly, we must feel that we belong to the same human race. I want to end on that, because we are not doing that at the moment, at the international level. On one occasion, I talked to a friend of mine. He was drinking his wine, and I was drinking my pineapple juice. And I said, look, you are not treating us well. He said, my dear friend, how should we treat you? I said, you should treat us as human beings. You buy our cocoa for cheap. You turn it to chocolate, you bring it back to us, and you sell it at an exorbitant price. What he said to me, I will friend, we did not design capitalism for you. We designed it for ourselves. But it did not stop there. I said, look, and he said to me, give me any reason why, if I can buy your cocoa for $100, bring it to Europe or where, add value, and bring the same cocoa back to you to sell to you for $1,000. What is wrong in it? I said, common humanity. He said, go and bring to me the economic books where common humanity is a factor of economic consideration. I couldn't lay my hand on that. So I was defeated. But I said to him, if there's no common humanity in economic books, there is common humanity in social interaction. And if you don't take that into consideration, then the world will not be a peaceful, stable, and wholesome society. Thank you very much.
But let me say this about history. There can be an official history of, say, OAUA. But official history of Africa, I don't know how it will look like. What we probably should do is to encourage Africa to write history of Africa. Because to me, history is like beauty. It is in the eye of the beholder. Now, it depends from what perspective you are writing the history. And everybody who is writing history has a perspective from which he's looking at it. Because the colonial master to oppress us, and to enslave us, the first thing to do when you want to enslave anybody is to make him or her feel that it's nothing. So they say we have no history, we have no past, we have no civilization. So what do we have? They even say we have no culture. And yet culture is the totality of the way of living of a human being. If you say we have no culture, then we are not human. Now, for me, I believe what then transpired is that when our own people started to write history, what they call agreement between the colonial master and our own leaders turned out to be one-sided agreement. You write an agreement, you ask a man who doesn't speak your language, who doesn't understand your language, to sign. They don't even sign. They put their thumb on it. Now I believe that maybe something can be done, but what I have read of what our people, Africans, have written about African history is really most commendable, because they have looked at history from the African perspective rather than from the colonial master perspective. The issue of television or radio channel, I believe that we should have a channel that can reflect the African perspective again. Whether it should be sponsored by the AU, and now we have Africans. I was saying earlier today that
President Koila, former president of Germany, asked me to provide him with a list of African multinationals. And I wrote 30 of them. About 16 of them come from South Africa, real multinationals. About 12 of them come from Nigeria, real multinationals. Some have gone beyond Africa. If we encourage them and we challenge them, individually or collectively, they can give us a television and radio channel that will reflect the perspective of Africa. At this juncture, I just want to add one more point. The chairperson made the point that we should congratulate our leaders for, on their own volition, saying, look, we don't want impunity. And they put it in the Constitutive Act of the AU. They said, we don't want any government that came outside constitutional process. They put it in the Constitutive Act. Not only did they put it there, they had taken steps to make sure that if you have come out as a leader outside constitution, you are not allowed to sit among them. Now there's no other organization in the world that allows this or that does this, where our leaders require commendation. Let us give them commendation. They also set up APRM as an arm of NEPA. And if you see the way they take themselves up, self-criticism, self-analysis, it is very, very commendable. What I'm saying is this: Africa is not perfect. We still have a long way to go. But where we have done well, let us say, like in my part of the world, give ourselves our part of the band. On this 50th anniversary of OAU and AU, there are areas where Africa must be given a part of the band. Thank you very much.